In this episode, we're taking a look at Saints Row 2. Released in 2008, this game is my favorite in the series and a direct sequel to Saints Row 1. If you haven't seen my Saints Row 1 video, I highly encourage you to give that one a watch first, as I will be referencing several things about that game here. Unlike Saints Row 1, Saints Row 2 is not an Xbox 360 exclusive and was also available on the PS3 and PC. The PC port, however, is notoriously horrible. To even have a shot at playing it properly, it requires a mod created by the late Mike Watson called Gentleman of the Row. It greatly reduces crashing as well as adjusting and rebalancing several other aspects of the game. Still doesn't run too great though. While Mike began as a revered modder under the name Idle Ninja, he was eventually hired by Volition and was working on fixing the PC version of the game. There's a bit of history here regarding Saints Row 2's source code that some people get mixed up. Ports are often handed off to third-party companies, which is fairly standard practice. The PC port was being done by one of the teams at CD Projekt. To say they shit the bed would be an understatement. When the game's publisher, THQ, went bankrupt and liquidated their assets in 2013, it was assumed that the source code was gone, lost forever. However, in 2019, Volition announced that they had found it, whatever that means. A lot of people mistakenly thought that they had lost the code for Saints Row 2 entirely, but it was just the PC version. Mike Watson was working on optimizing the game, multiplayer with Steam support, as well as incorporating the DLC, which was never available on the base PC version. Unfortunately, Mike had cancer and knew his days were numbered. He made sure that Volition would continue to work on the patch after his death. Following THQ's closure, Volition and Saints Row were acquired by Deep Silver. In 2022, a few months after the release of the rebooted Saints Row, Volition was moved under Gearbox, another publisher within Embracer Group, Deep Silver's parent company. Embracer Group had some shit going on, and a story about a $2 billion deal falling through began making the rounds. It seemed that in anticipation of that deal, Embracer Group had bit off more than they could chew. As such, layoffs, closures, and cancellations were likely inevitable. Volition was one of the casualties, and in August of 2023, they closed their doors for good. So what this means for the PC patch, Mike Watson's parting gift, is unknown. All of Volition's IP has been retained by Deep Silver, but whether they choose to continue any more work on the Saints Row franchise is a mystery. If you ask me, the patch is unlikely to come, and the Saints Row franchise will likely sit dormant for several years until they attempt to reboot it again in the far future. For stability's sake, let's just emulate this one too. Before we get started here, I just wanted to talk about the graphics because for some reason I actually find them worse, or at least weirder, than Saints Row 1. This was also the case with the two Battlefront games, where a lot of people thought the first one looked nicer. I think there's two main culprits here. The first one is the lighting. I don't know what happened to the engine between the two games, but to me, the colors looked better in Saints Row 1. Saints Row 2 has this dirty, hazy, washed out look to it. I'm not exactly sure what happened. Like, was this a stylistic choice? The second thing has to do with the character models. While Saints Row 1 did have a customizable character, the Saints Row 2 one is more advanced, allowing you to also make a female character. And the character actually talks. This means that the rigging and animations might look a little off depending on how you make your character. Also, male voice 1 is like this British Cockney voice and it is hysterical, but also weirdly fitting.
This is total bullshit. You can't just cut me out of the loop.
I can do whatever the fuck I want. It's one of the perks of running a game.
Something they also changed were the NPCs. Now every NPC looks like they were made by the character creator and wears clothing that you yourself can also wear. It's really cool in theory, but I guess this kinda downgraded the characters across the board, as they all look a little worse in this game compared to the last one. Remember Luz from the Los Carnales arc? Well, here she is in Saints Row 2. I don't know, maybe the lighting is technically more dynamic and the characters have higher fidelity, but Saints Row 1 just seemed nicer to look at. It definitely didn't help that Saints Row 2 was released a few months after GTA 4, which I think looks much better, despite also having a bit of a shit filter too. And back then, nobody was thinking about game engines, development cycles, and studio size. Simply put, the newer the game, the better it was expected to look. Normally I talk about fundamental stuff now, but seeing as a lot of it is the same, let me just go over the beginning of the story real quick. So this game is set 5 years after Saints Row 1. Remember at the end how the yacht exploded? The player actually survived, but was comatose and disfigured. That's the lore reason for the character customizer. The game doesn't assume your gender or race going forward, but it's interesting to note that the game uses an African American boss in loading screens. You awake in the prison infirmary, and a fellow prisoner named Carlos helps you escape. He says his brother was previously with the Saints. When you escape the prison, Carlos reveals that after the player's disappearance, the Saints essentially dissolved. A clothing company named Ultor began expanding its business into other areas and became a multi-billion-dollar corporation. In the 5 years of the player's absence, Ultor followed through on Hugh's plans and redeveloped the row. What was once a neighborhood of shithouses is now a glistening utopia of modern engineering. Reaching land, the player realizes there's nothing left of the Saints and will have to rebuild them from the ground up. So yeah, that's how we've arrived at Saints Row 2. As for the rest of the game, a lot of it is the same. The 3-gang structure is still here, as well as the respect system. They did add some things to the combat, such as fine aim. But as a result, you don't hold pistols and SMGs sideways anymore. You can dual wield them though, which is awesome. There are plenty of new weapons as well, but all the slots remain the same. You can pick up various objects in the open world and use them as weapons or throw them. The game also lets you use NPCs as human shields. In terms of vehicles, there are also now drivable helicopters, planes, boats, and motorcycles. Let's talk about the city of Stilwater. A great map just got even better. It's largely the same, but a few new districts were added. The Suburbs district was expanded in what is literally called the Suburbs Expansion. It now includes a cemetery and a purchasable dock to store boats. Right under it is a trailer park district. A hotels and marina district was added above the high-end retail district. The name is pretty self-explanatory. You can find a casino here where you can actually play poker and blackjack. The museum district was reworked and expanded to include ancient Greek architecture. An underground area known as the Stilwater Caverns was added to the factories district. There's a new university district west of the arena district. The airport district was redone and the airport itself can now be entered. There is also a hangar where you can store planes, which handle differently than helicopters. There are 2 additional islands accessible by boat or helicopter, which are the prison island where you start the game and a nuclear power plant. Downtown there's a very large mall hidden underground. Eventually the campaign will lead you here, but it's entirely unmarked on the map. It even has a few stores that you can shop at. And lastly, we have the Row, redeveloped as mentioned. The church that the Saints used as an HQ was preserved and converted into a tourist attraction. The trains are no longer usable for fast travel anymore, despite them still being active in the open world. Players probably preferred using taxis instead, as they only cost a little bit more and it's faster and more reliable. Still would have been cool to have the option though. The stores are the same, but they got rid of barbershops and movie theaters. The barbershops got incorporated into plastic surgeons. Movie theaters got split into 2 different crib functions, which I'll explain in a bit. There's an additional weapons store called Brass Knuckles, which sells a variety of melee-based weapons. In general, there's just more of everything. More food options, more clothes, and more weapons. Speaking of weapons, they changed the way you buy ammo, and also made all weapons of a class share ammo. Nice. Some stores remain in the same location, while others either moved or had their exteriors changed. Many buildings underwent changes as well, such as Tanya's brothel becoming Club Koi, and the TNA strip club getting renovated. You can purchase stores in controlled neighborhoods, which will give you a discount when shopping there as well as award you some hourly income. The stores no longer close, meaning that the theft minigame is no longer available. You can still rob them via holdup though. You can also rob NPCs by aiming at them. Booze and drugs had their visual impairment heightened, but no longer offer any stat boost. And something cool that I didn't mention in the last video is that consuming ether in front of a cop will instantly raise notoriety. Saints Row 2 Stillwater also has a lot more Easter eggs and secret areas, making it a lot more fun to explore. Saints Row 2 removes spawn locations and replaces them with more cribs. Most of these are available for purchase in the open world, and provide access to all the standard crib features. When you load up a save, the game will determine the nearest crib to where you last saved and spawn you there. This is one of my biggest peeves with Saints Row 1, and I much prefer this system. I also love that it spawns gang members in your cribs. It really makes the Saints feel like a sizable force. The cribs also feature a little bit of customization, which will increase your style rank. Buying clothes will also increase the rank. Your style level will award you some bonus respect when doing activities and diversions. You can customize the appearance of the Saint NPCs as well. The cribs now feature a newspaper bulletin board and a TV. You use the bulletin board to replay missions and the TV to replay cutscenes. After each mission, you'll see a snippet of a newspaper article detailing the event, which is a neat little world-building thing. It's a bit of a shame that the theaters are gone, but since you always spawn in a crib, it's a lot more convenient. In Saints Row 1, you were awarded 4 cribs throughout the campaign. Unfortunately, none of them are available in this game. I think the lore explanation is that they got sold off while you were in your coma. This game features all activities from the previous game except for hijacking, as well as several new ones, like Fuzz, which is my favorite. In this you pretend to be a police officer for a reality show, using lethal force when responding to street calls. I talked about the problem with Hitman in Saints Row 1, and they made it much easier. The triggers to get them to spawn can also happen at any time, so you may find targets appearing while you are playing a mission. They also reduce the max level of an activity from 8 to 6, and have rewards for completing levels 3 and 6. This makes them a lot less of a grind to play through, and they're generally easier. The activities also display their progress when you hover over them on the map, and get grayed out when they're fully complete. The game has a zombie mode called Zombie Uprising, which isn't technically an activity and can be accessed via a TV or at an arcade machine. It's not very deep, but is a fun little bonus activity. As for other quality of life stuff, the game now has autosave. It also has a difficulty setting that is changeable at any time. I think there's too much of a gap between normal and hard, but for most people I think normal is enjoyable. Easy for the most part, but sometimes a bit difficult. You can access your wardrobe at clothing stores now, which I honestly can't believe wasn't a feature in the last game. Also, there's a much more expansive color picker now. The penalties for dying have been reduced, and getting busted is really hard as it requires you to be low health, meaning you'll probably just die instead. Missions that require you to drive somewhere will now provide you with a vehicle, which was pretty rare in the last game. The missions themselves also now have checkpoints. The NPCs are a lot more diverse in this game, both in appearance and in terms of what they do. If you thought the NPCs were funny in the last game, they're absolutely cracked out in this one. There's so many unique animations they can be doing, even in a basic walk cycle. As you progress through the game, the NPCs will talk to you about things that have happened between the Saints and other gangs.
What was in that shipment anyway?
The NPCs in this game are a big reason why this version of Stillwater feels as lively as it does. I forgot to talk about this in the Saints Row 1 video, but you can use the phone to call homies and have them hang out with you in the open world. And one final point is I also want to give a shout out to 107.77 The Mix, the radio station that plays 80s pop music. This rotation is nothing but bangers. It's easily my favorite radio station in the Saints Row franchise, and I thank Felician and THQ for shelling out to get the rights to these songs. Alright, I think we're ready to talk about the story. If you thought the last game was a bit absurd, then buckle up because this one is ridiculous. Especially in regards to the playa. You're basically a Terminator in this one. Just like the last game, there is quite a star-studded voice cast. So to quickly recap from earlier, the yacht explodes, we wake up 5 years later, and a kid named Carlos helps us escape the prison. Carlos recommends you just sit tight and soak up info, so the playa heads to the strip club for a drink. On the news, you see that Johnny Gat is currently on trial for several murders. You race to the courthouse to prevent Johnny from getting sentenced. Johnny's being a prick to the judge who is about to give him the chair, but he gets saved when the playa barges in and interrupts the trial. It's interesting to note that he's being represented by Legal Lee, an NPC in Saints Row 1 that had you commit insurance fraud. Now you and Gat have to shoot your way out of the courthouse. In the next room, you find the judge shooting at you with a shotgun and are forced to shoot her. Johnny tells you to drive to Aisha's house. On the way, he reveals that Julius went missing and that Troy became chief of police. Apparently Dex did something pretty bad, but he doesn't mention what it was. You drop off Johnny and return to visit him sometime later. In order to rebuild the Saints, they decide they need a new base of operations as Aisha won't let them use her house. The two head out to an abandoned mission house that has a hotel beneath it. When an earthquake caused part of the city to sink below sea level, they just built on top of it. The only problem is that it's currently occupied by a bunch of bums and a few members of the Sons of Samedi. You evict the current tenants and claim it as the new Saints hideout. This place will gradually get upgraded as you complete missions, eventually resulting in a nicely finished club called Purgatory. The next step is recruiting members, most importantly some lieutenants. Playa plans on recruiting Carlos, while Gat gives him the info of some people he met while in jail. You can meet with these three in any order and have to prove to them that you're worth your salt. Carlos has you help him repossess a car from someone who owes him money. A guy named Pierce has you kill some members of the Ronin. A stoner chick named Shondi has you do some stunt jumps in a car. Afterwards, you all reconvene at the Saints' hideout where Johnny has gathered some more members, and the playa gives a speech. With you now being the leading voice of the Saints, your crew will refer to you as boss. This is where the three-gang structure begins. Let's start with the Sons of Samedi. The Sons of Samedi, which we encountered earlier, are green and are the new drug-related gang. They are led by a guy named The General, his second-in-command Mr. Sunshine, and their top lieutenant, a DJ named Veteran Child. They are a bit of a religious cult as well, being named after Baron Samedi, the Lord of the Dead. Shondi is assigned to the Sons of Samedi. She slept around a lot, and many of her exes provide useful intel as drug users. Shondi's plan is to reverse engineer their number one product called Loa Dust, which would allow the Saints to undercut them and steal their sales. To do so, she needs some samples, so you head over to the University District and obtain some. And while you're there, you take out one of the Samdi's top dealers. As part of the reverse engineering process, Shondi then sends the boss to break out a drug dealer from prison who would know how to do it. When you get there, you discover it's Laura, an NPC that was part of the drug trafficking activity in Saints Row 1. After escaping the prison, jacking a helicopter and bringing her back to her house, you discover she's married to Tobias, another drug-dealing NPC from Saints Row 1. How cute. Laura says that she can reproduce it, so now you just need to stop the Samedi from producing any more. Shondi recalls an ex-boyfriend telling her that they produce it at a farm off the university campus. Tobias takes you up in a chopper and you lay waste to the farm. Afterwards, the General and Mr. Sunshine interrogate Veteran Child about the farm attack. They tell him to kill Shondi or he will be burned alive. Sometime later, Veteran Child shows up to the Saints' hideout and takes Shondi hostage. He then calls the boss and invites him to a club called Cox. It's expectedly a setup, but Pierce finds out that Veteran Child was scheduled at another club. When reaching Veteran Child, he's taken Shondi as a human shield. You just gotta throw flashbangs at him and shoot at him when he lets go of her. As the boss and Shondi exit the club, the General's limo can be seen pulling away, showing that they are aware of Veteran Child's defeat. Shondi invites the boss over to a party she's at where one of her exes gives you intel about a Samedi drug lab in the Shivington neighborhood. There's 4 different locations that you need to visit. Upon reaching the last lab, you'll also have to kill the lab technicians. The lead technician manages to escape in a car. Oh shit. God damn. Thank God for checkpoints. The General and Mr. Sunshine watch from a rooftop as a fire spreads across Shivington. The General insists that there can't be any interruptions with the next shipment, so Mr. Sunshine suggests that it's time to meet the leader of the Saints. The General's limo pulls up on the boss and he gets jumped by 2 Samedi members and abducted. The boss is then drugged, which leads to some of the funniest dialogue in the game.
Well, listen, Sunshine. I don't care how fucked up your face is. I ain't scared of you, Oh, that other arsehole. Pity.
The general orders his goons to execute the boss, but a ruckus ensues that ends up with you rolling out onto the street. Still stoned out of your mind, Shandi calls and says that the Samedi are attacking the hideout. You hightail it over there and save Shandi. Pierce eventually arrives and then it just becomes a horde attack. You end up killing like 60-something Samedi members. Back at the Saints HQ, Pierce is throwing a fit because he doesn't get invited to go out in the field with you. Somehow, the Sons of Samedi are still moving product. Eventually, Shandi gets a call from another X saying that the Samedi are using helicopters to move their product. You invite Pierce to come along and he drives you around as you shoot down the copters. Near the end, Pierce will turn on the radio and sing along to Neo's So Sick to the boss's dismay.
Pierce? What the hell are we listening to? Oh, God.
The general then meets with Mr. Sunshine and cuts his ear off for failing to stop the attack. In a desperate move, Mr. Sunshine encourages a bunch of bums to attack the Saints as we are now producing Loadust. You get attacked at the drug factory while getting ready to transport the product back to the HQ. After fending off the attack, you interrogate a bum and find out that Mr. Sunshine is hiding at the meatpacking plant. The boss heads over to the plant to kill Sunshine, forbidding Shandi to come as she was recently punked by Veteran Child. This is a really weird one. He uses a voodoo doll which kind of flings you around and you can't damage him while he's holding it. Instead, you have to shoot the doll out of his hands and attack him while he's going to retrieve it. It's honestly not much of a boss fight, but anyways, in the following cutscene he appears to be enchanted and tanks several pistol rounds. The boss unloads, but also takes a machete and chops his head off. The only remaining player of the Samedi is the General, but locating him is no easy feat. The boss and Shandi head to the police headquarters to hack into the city's traffic cameras. You initially don't want to bring Shandi along, but miraculously she knows how to hack into their system. You steal some repairman disguises and enter the station. As soon as the hack begins, the jig is up, and all police become hostile. Once Shandi's done, you jack a helicopter and travel back to the hideout. The boss has the gang set up a 24/7 surveillance to find the general. In the final mission, the gang locates the general's limo and sets up an ambush at the shopping center. You successfully ram him off the road, but he manages to run to the underground shopping mall. After chasing him through the mall, he appears in an armored car with a turret. I have no idea how he got that in here, but Shandi will bring you some ATVs to chase after him. You defeat him and light a victory cigar, bringing an end to the Sons of Samedi.
That's it, huh?
Seeing as we stole their drugs, cornered the lower dust market, took their territory and killed their leader, I'm pretty sure the Sons of Samedi are fucked.
The Ronin's color is yellow and they run gambling and prostitution in the city. They're like a Japanese biker gang, although they have both Asian and Caucasian members. They all carry swords around too, with some of them favoring them over guns. In Stillwater they are led by Shogo Akuji, and his second in command Junichi. But at a global level, Shogo's father, Kazuo Akuji, is the kingpin. Pierce is assigned to the Ronin. The boss kinda looks down on him, even though he actually does a decent job. As a result, Johnny Gat is heavily involved in the Ronin storyline. The Ronin story begins with Pierce drawing up a plan to rob one of their casinos. He suggests an elaborate operation, which is immediately vetoed by Gat, who says we'll just barge in and shoot whoever opposes. You and Gat arrive and slay all the Ronin members in the casino. After Gat blows the doors open to the safe, you load the money into a truck and drive it back to Aisha's house. In the aftermath, Shogo assures Junichi that his father won't find out about the casino getting robbed. Back at Aisha's house, the boss, Gat, and Pierce watch a newscast covering the robbery. In the report, the caster states that the 3rd Street Saints have returned and calls Pierce an unknown accomplice, which makes him sad. The boss then heads out to clean the money by buying a car and a rifle and then reselling them to a fence. At the Ronin HQ, Shogo is on the phone with Kazuo and is explaining the casino failure. Kazuo plans on coming to America to teach Shogo how to properly lead. Shogo demands to Junichi that the Saints must be dealt with before his father arrives. Sometime later, the boss is waiting for Johnny at Aisha's house when he comes storming in with the Ronin member he found patrolling the neighborhood. The guy reveals that Kazuo is coming before Johnny executes him. Kazuo has quite the reputation, as even Johnny is a bit wary of him. The boss heads out and kills the patrolling Ronin before they can find the Saints' hideout. Later, Shogo meets with Dane Vogel, the special projects head at Ultor, who has hired the Ronin for protection. Vogel expresses concern about the Saints. Junichi is then seen watching Johnny and Aisha. He receives a call from Shogo, but cuts him off, saying that he will handle the Saints situation. Junichi takes Aisha hostage and has the Ronin set up a trap within her own home. When Johnny and the boss arrive, they notice that the door is slightly ajar. As Johnny calls for her from behind the door, the Ronin set up the ambush and Junichi decapitates Aisha. A fight ensues as the boss engages in a shootout while Johnny obtains a sword and fights with Junichi. Junichi actually stops one of the Ronin from shooting at Johnny so he could honorably duel him. The boss tells Johnny to move so he can shoot at Junichi, but that only distracts Johnny, causing him to get stabbed. Junichi escapes and the boss tends to Johnny, who is bleeding out. You defend him for a while, and when the ambulance fails to show up, you have a Saint pick you up instead. You're given unlimited RPG ammo and have to prevent the car from exploding on the way to the hospital. This guy driving takes a crazy long path to the hospital, but as long as you don't shoot too close to yourself, it's not that bad. After arriving at the hospital, the boss calls Pierce and has him find out when Kazuo will be coming into town. Pierce successfully obtains a passenger manifest for Kazuo's plane. The boss and Pierce head to the airport as the plane will be landing soon. When you arrive, you drop several Ronin, but there is no sign of Kazuo. It's revealed that Junichi had spotted us in the airport and evacuated Kazuo off the tarmac. Shogo calls Junichi, but he's not allowed to speak with his father, as Junichi is acting as Kazuo's second in command. At a bar, Pierce is asking the boss for a promotion, but is denied as Gat will recover eventually. The boss then receives a call from Shogo, who gives him Junichi's location. The boss immediately heads out to eliminate him.
Die with some honor.
Okay. This is the start to one of the weirdest fight sequences in all of Saints Row. You decide to honorably battle Junichi using only a sword. What a completely ridiculous scenario here. The combat is honestly kinda wonky, but I give them credit for doing something different. Some Ronin members will also spawn, and you can sorta hack and slash at them, but if you try to slash at Junichi, you get countered. You can only damage him by countering his attacks. Eventually, you'll stab him in the face. A rather ridiculous victory against a trained swordsman, but we take those. It turns out Shogo's insecurity bit him in the ass, as his father is severely distraught over Junichi's death. Shogo, just wanting to make his father proud, vows to take revenge on Johnny Gat, but Kazuo doesn't care. The boss then visits Gat in the hospital and tells him Junichi has been slain. The Saints have also been waiting for Gat to heal up before having a funeral for Aisha. At the same time, the Ronin arrive to try to kill Gat. The boss has to wheel Johnny out on a gurney. You fight to the main floor, but the ambulance you were going to take gets destroyed. You go to the roof instead and evacuate in a helicopter. Dane Vogel meets with Kazuo and Shogo, condemning their attack on the hospital. Kazuo refuses to take orders and basically tells Vogel to go fuck himself. Shogo puts his tail between his legs and does the same. As Pierce, Gat, and the boss are planning out their next moves against the Ronin, Vogel shows up at the Saints' hideout. Gat, who has recovered from his injuries, reveals that Vogel had visited the church once and offered Dex a job at Ultor, which Dex took. Vogel reveals that Ultor has broken up with the Ronin. He gives them the address to the Ronin Hotel, their current base of operations. To prove he's a man of his word, he offers to stay at the Saints' hideout as collateral. Pierce stays behind to watch Vogel while the boss and Gat head out to destroy the hotel.
Johnny, when we get to that hotel, we're killing every motherfucker in there.
Good.
When you get there, Gat stays on the main floor and you begin planting bombs on each floor of the hotel. A timer will begin after planting the first bomb, so you have to move pretty quick. At the top floor, you make a pit stop to kill all the Ronin lieutenants, but neither Kazuo or Shogo are present. You do a Hollywood parachute jump to the main floor as the hotel explodes around you. As Kazuo and Shogo examine the damage, Shogo declares that he'll fix things, but Kazuo doubts him. At Aisha's funeral, Shogo shows up and tells Gat he will pay for embarrassing the Akuji family. Gat calmly states that he doesn't want bloodshed on the day of Aisha's funeral. Shogo's too much of an idiot, so a fight breaks out. After dealing about 50% of Shogo's HP, he'll run away and you'll have to clear the rest of the Ronin lieutenants. Then he'll begin escaping on a motorcycle. The dude was driving horribly, which made it easy. Afterwards, the boss drags Shogo back to the cemetery where Gat then brutally beats him. Gat then empties a casket from another funeral and loads Shogo into it. Shogo begs to be killed as Gat and the boss bury him alive. While not that violent, this is definitely one of the most gruesome kills in the series. Sometime later, Pierce arrives at the Saints' hideout with Mr. Wong, an NPC from Saints Row 1 that was part of the Hitman activity. The Ronin secretly followed Pierce and Mr. Wong and begin an assault that largely takes place outside the hideout in the area that the bums still reside in. After staving off most of the attack, Kazuo arrives, but is overwhelmed and retreats. The boss assigns Gat to protect Mr. Wong. During the Chinese Heritage Festival, the Ronin launch another attack. Gat gets separated from Mr. Wong, who engages in a duel with Kazuo. The boss receives a call from Wong's translator and heads over via jet ski. You make it just in time to witness Kazuo defeating Mr. Wong in their duel. This basically becomes a repeat of the Junichi fight. At least this time, Kazuo gets the upper hand, but then you pull out a pistol and shoot him. Kazuo asks you to finish it, so you call Mr. Wong, who managed to survive, and let him hear Kazuo scream as you stab him. You leave Kazuo to burn and jump from the boat, bringing an end to the Ronin arc. The last gang is the Brotherhood, who are red and obsessed with monster trucks or something. To be honest, I'm not exactly sure what it is they do. It seems like they're just a group of guys who sort of bully their way around. And they're built like Samoans, making them the most physically intimidating gang. They are led by a guy named Mero, but he keeps his tattoo guy close and his girlfriend Jessica. Donnie reappears from the last game and is the gang's mechanic. The boss assigns Carlos to the Brotherhood, which is a tough task since not much is known about them. The story begins with Mero requesting a meeting with the boss. Carlos comes with, and you meet Mero in the Stilwater Caverns. He knows about the boss and their history and wants to offer a partnership. Their meeting is quickly cut short by some patrolling police officers. You fight your way out of the caverns with Mero and Carlos. You get a choice to retreat to the Brotherhood hideout by boat or by car. I don't think either are that hard, but I chose to go by boat. After arriving, the boss notices Donnie working on a truck but doesn't approach him. You meet Mero's girlfriend Jessica and his tattoo guy Matt, who is the lead singer of a band called the Feed Dogs. Mero states that the Brotherhood have some business coming up and offers the Saints a 20% cut. The boss is insulted and ends up leaving. In the next mission, the boss ambushes Donnie at the spot where you and Lynn were pushed into the water back in Saints Row 1. He then has Donnie rig several explosives to Brotherhood trucks and blows them up. After, he dumps Donnie back at the Brotherhood HQ, where Donnie reveals what he did to Mero. Mero looks about ready to kill him, but Jessica convinces him not to. The boss then meets Carlos on a train. He doesn't have much intel since the Brotherhood are being secretive after the Donnie incident. He says there's some kind of shipment coming, but that's the extent of it. Unsure of the next move, the boss comes up with this ridiculous idea to burn Mero's face with radioactive ink. You head over to Friendly Fire to obtain a Geiger counter. You then boat over to the nuclear power plant and use the device to detect some toxic waste. You're supposed to stealth this part, but you'll end up getting spotted eventually. Once you obtain the waste, you call Carlos and have him pick you up in a helicopter. You then clear out a helipad and wait for him. The copter is shot down, but you and Carlos miraculously survive. You grab a car and drive the toxic waste over to a tattoo shop near the Brotherhood hideout. In the following cutscene, Mero receives a new tattoo on his face, which begins to burn him. Sometime later, the boss receives a call from Jessica. In response to Mero's facial fiasco, the Brotherhood have taken Carlos and plan on giving him a makeover as well. With no further intel, you head over to Donnie's garage and furiously beat him until he coughs up something useful. He says that they are driving him around the docks. The clock starts ticking as you need to reach Carlos before he runs out of health. When you catch up, you realize that he's been chained to the back of a truck and is being dragged around. Ouch. You manage to stop the truck, but by that point, Carlos has been scraped up for so long he's in a tremendous amount of pain. The boss tries to free him but realizes that there's likely no saving him. Carlos gives the go-ahead and the boss mercy kills him. In the next mission, Shaundi is playing hacky sack outside of a Stilwater bank and is almost run over by Jessica. She then calls the boss, who heads over right away. You're supposed to take Jessica as a human shield, but if you tap the button instead of holding it, you'll end up quickly throwing her. Anyways, the bank alarm goes off, but if you hold Jessica between yourself and any police, they won't shoot. You walk her to the back, get her to shut the alarm off, and then march her back outside to her car. After putting her in the trunk, you drive over to the stadium in the University District. Marrow is about to partake in a monster truck rally, so you plant the car among the heap of scrap cars. Marrow goes for a huge jump and ends up crushing Jessica's car with her inside it. The boss shows up and tosses him the keys, telling him to look inside the trunk and reminding him about the insulting 20% offer. As the rivalry continues to escalate, the boss is dead set on stealing this mysterious shipment from the Brotherhood. The only remaining lead is the tattoo guy, who will be performing at a concert later that night. It's Pierce's idea, but Shaundi cuts him off, to which the boss gives her credit for it. Pierce comes along and we head to steal a delivery truck containing fireworks. I'm not really sure why we did this. It's not like we're using the truck to sneak past them, just look at the gameplay. You arrive at the concert and clear the place out to interrogate Matt. You don't get much out of him, but do find out that the shipment will be arriving by boat. The boss then uses stage pyrotechnics to cripple Matt's arm. As the boss is enjoying some time at a strip club, Pierce shows up and says that the Brotherhood are causing mayhem across the Saints' turf. You head out and defeat several of the Brotherhood lieutenants. Ooh, what a goddamn snipe. In the aftermath, Marrow arrives at the Phillips building to confront Dane Vogel. He physically strong-arms Vogel into agreeing to help take out the Saints, making the timeline kinda weird if you play this at the same time as the Ronin storyline. Vogel ends up calling Troy and forces him to release all the incarcerated Brotherhood members. As the boss is walking down a street, he passes by a store where several of the display TVs are playing the news. He sees the live cast as members of the Brotherhood are being loaded onto prison buses and driven to their drop-off points where they will be let go. You chase down and destroy all the buses, before Pierce notifies you that they are also coming by boat. Marrow once again storms into Vogel's office, but Ultor has assembled a private army, and Vogel declares that their partnership is over. As Marrow leaves, Vogel tells him that Ultor has also seized his shipment. A while later, Shaundi calls you and has you meet her at an arcade to discuss the shipment. The two decide to unwind by poorly playing some skee-ball, and Shaundi reveals that Marrow had been calling around the docks to find out when his shipment would be arriving. Finding it weird that Marrow would not know when their own shipment arrives, the boss heads out to investigate. Pierce calls to relay some newly discovered info, but the boss puts him on hold to talk to Shaundi. She reveals that the shipment is a very large supply of guns, some intel that she literally just stole from Pierce. So you go to grab a helicopter and fly over, and it's surprisingly a lot farther than you'd expect. After landing, you begin taking out all the Ultor security aboard the ship. The boss then finds a large supply of weaponry in the cargo hold, and you are given unlimited RPG and assault rifle ammo. You then have to head topside and fight 3 waves of Brotherhood attacks. Each wave will also include some helicopters that you have to shoot down. Fortunately, they aren't capable of firing and will fly in set patterns. Once you defeat them all, you call Shaundi and have her arrange to transport the cargo. With the stolen arsenal, the boss decides to attack the Brotherhood hideout and kill Marrow. I did find it weird that neither Pierce, Shaundi, or Gat were present for this mission, but oh well, you just get some regular Saints. You kill several of their lieutenants before proceeding up their main building. A really awesome detail is that as you climb the floors, you'll run into more Saints already fighting. It helps make it feel like a large-scale attack. I was really impressed that my AI followers were able to move up the stairs, which some games seem to struggle with. After reaching the top floor, you'll engage in a 1v1 with Marrow, who is wielding a minigun. You can use these blocks for cover, but they will explode. In the cutscene, Marrow runs out of ammo, but manages to grab a hold of you, sending you both tumbling into the building. You both survive the crash, scaring both Donnie and Matt. You scrap a bit more, with the boss gaining the upper hand. As it looks like Marrow is losing, Matt reappears and tackles you, allowing Marrow to escape. You hit Matt with a brick, but by the time you make it outside, Donnie has picked up Marrow in a vehicle and they drive off. In the newspaper clipping for this level, it's revealed that Matt had actually died. So between the first hit and the second throw, one of them killed him. With nothing left, Meryl calls you up and challenges you to a final showdown at the Ultor Dome. When you arrive, you realize that you got baited and Meryl is here with the remaining Brotherhood. They'll begin to drive around, but thankfully there are RPGs placed in the arena and you just have to blow them up. Eventually Meryl will become more aggressive and will try to run you over. After defeating him, he crawls out of the wreckage. The boss then hits him a few times before executing him, putting an end to the Brotherhood. With all gangs defeated, the only other power left in the city is Ultor. This mission is a hidden one that is available after rescuing Johnny from the courthouse. It explains what happened at the end of Saints Row 1. On that drive to Aisha's while Johnny is dumping all that info on you, he mentions that Troy has been trying to find out what happened that night on the yacht. The boss responds by saying he might swing by the police station when he has a chance. That's the only hint the game gives you, as this mission does not appear on the map. The police station that you need to go to is located in the Row, and your initial impression is that you're gonna have to fight through a ton of officers. But turns out you can just walk into the place. You have to go to the 3rd floor and listen to 3 phone recordings. They reveal that Dex knew Troy was a cop and that he took the Ultor job. Troy then convinced Julius to help dismantle the Saints, or Troy would have to arrest them. To take care of the playa, Julius plants the bomb on the yacht. I guess that much can be inferred anyways. But then you head to Troy's office and find Dex's phone number. When you call him, he has you meet him at the Saints' church so the two of you can get revenge on Julius. When you arrive at the church, you end up meeting Julius, who had also been lured there by Dex. Some Masako soldiers begin to assault the church as you and Julius realize that you've both been set up. You defend the church for a few waves, similar to the Strength in Numbers mission from Saints Row 1. You then escape the church and crash into the amphitheater and the museum district. Still being pissed at Julius for his betrayal, the boss shoots him in the chest. As the two argue, Julius states that the Saints had failed to do any good for the city and became nothing more than purple-colored Vice Kings. You know, he's kinda right. I forgot to mention this in the last video, but the Saints were trying to clean up the city, acting as sort of a vigilante force. But in this game, the Saints were pretty vile. He basically calls you a sociopath and asks if you would have quit the Saints had he simply asked, to which you say no. The boss makes reference to his past self, saying it's better to be in charge than keeping his mouth shut and doing what he's told. Julius points out that he saved the boss at the beginning of Saints Row 1, but the boss responds that Julius had also put him in a coma. Julius calls us even, but the boss shoots him in the head. In the following newspaper clipping, it is revealed that Julius had been working as a tour guide at the Saints' church. Dane Vogel is seen giving a presentation to some Ultor investors. Riding off the success of the Row's development, he suggests a plan to redevelop Shivington. That kinda calls into question when this cutscene takes place. If you remember during the Sons of Samedi story, part of the neighborhood was set ablaze when we destroyed all those drug labs. This cutscene is unlocked after defeating all other gangs, which means it probably takes place at some point in the past. The boss gets attacked by Masako soldiers at the Club Koi nightclub. After escaping, Johnny calls suspecting Ultor is attacking all Saint members. The boss heads out to save Pierce and Shandi. Meeting back at the hideout, the boss examines the body of a dead Masako soldier. He finds an employee badge for a place called the Pyramid, and tells Shandi and Pierce to find out whatever they can about it. Meeting with the gang, Shandi reveals that the Pyramid is a giant Ultor R&D facility located under Mount Claflin. The boss instructs Pierce and Shandi to damage Ultor property, distracting them so that the boss and Johnny can infiltrate the facility. You meet with Johnny in the facility's secret sewer entrance. You then battle, or mostly walk, through the facility and plant 3 separate bombs before escaping. This place has very little inside security. Even the employees don't seem too bothered. With the pyramid destroyed, Ultor's board of directors expressed their concerns to Vogel, telling him that his job is at risk unless he can deal with the Saints. At the Saints' hideout, you receive a package from an unknown sender. It contains an article about an Ultor fundraising gala aboard a yacht. You intend to crash the party and exact revenge, but Pierce warns you that it may be a trap akin to the one set by Julius. You decide to go anyway and grab a jet ski to get to the yacht. Oh. Let's try that again. What the hell? There we go. Once you get there, you slay all the Ultor execs on board. Vogel is seen safely watching the chaos from the Phillips building. This implies that he was the one that sent you the package as a means to promote himself to the top of Ultor. Vogel does get promoted and gives a speech in front of the Saints' Church. His plan to redevelop Shivington has been greenlit by Mayor Monica Hughes, who is the widow of Richard Hughes, who also died on the yacht. The boss and Johnny are using this opportunity to try to assassinate Vogel. The plan goes awry when a security guard catches Johnny posted up on a rooftop and the two begin to tussle. Johnny wins, but the cover is blown, so the boss begins to fire. Vogel is safely evacuated, after which the boss chases after his armored limo. Eventually, Vogel will head back to the Phillips building, where he then places it into lockdown. Gat calls and tells you to use a helicopter to destroy the outer security stations, which will crash the system. After doing so, the boss does this ridiculous Tom Cruise Mission Impossible stunt, jumping out of the cockpit and into Vogel's office. Once there, you defeat Vogel's Masako squad. As Vogel begs for his life, the boss shoots him in the mouth, causing him to do a cartoony fall to his death. Shondi and Pierce finally arrive, and the boss calls Gat and tells him to wrap things up wherever he is. He then calls Tobias to come and pick them up. As the Saints leave, Pierce asks what they're gonna do now, and the boss replies that they can do anything since they own the city. And with that, the credits roll and the Saints Row 2 story has concluded. Like with the last game, Saints Row 2 has online PvP in the form of free-for-all, TDM, and a new mode called Strong Arm. In this mode, teams battle over a neighborhood by accumulating the most money. You get money by killing other players, participating in activities, and spraying tags. This mode really encourages team play. The biggest improvement to multiplayer though is in the co-op. While Saints Row 1 only had like 3 unique missions to play, in Saints Row 2 the entire game can be played with another person. That is pretty damn awesome. Let's see what reviewers had to say about this one. Metacritic gives this an aggregate score of 81, which just so happens to be the same score that Saints Row 1 got. I find that a bit interesting, as I think this game is certainly better than Saints Row 1, but in the context of the release window, I guess it's understandable. The opinions towards the campaign were much more favorable this time around, with many applauding the decision to take the series in a more absurd direction. I'd agree with that, and I think that the game being more upfront with the goofy stuff helped it age more gracefully than Saints Row 1. Reviews were also much more forgiving of the GTA influence, since leaning into the craziness helped the game carve its own identity, not just in the story, but also in the gameplay. Some reviewers got unlucky and had to play the PC version of the game, which probably caused them to dock some points from the overall score. Like the last game, there is a general sentiment that despite whatever is going on with the plot, the game is still very fun. Improving on all the mechanics introduced in Saints Row 1, Saints Row 2 has a ton to offer. To me, it has the most substance of any Saints Row game, and Saints Row 2 Stillwater is hands down the best open world Volition has ever produced. Gameplay, customization, open world, voice acting, and co-op multiplayer are all fantastic. The things I feel so-so about, like the story and the graphics, are entirely offset by the entertainment factor. Volition really outdid themselves here. Saints Row 2 reached heights that would never be matched again. There's a reason fans of the series were begging for a remaster or remake of this game, no matter how unlikely that may have been. While Saints Row 3 and 4 are fun games, I think there were a ton of areas where they fell short, especially to someone like myself that enjoyed Saints Row 2 the most. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. In conclusion, Saints Row 2 is an awesome game, one of my all-time favorites, and definitely worth playing if you've never had the chance. Until next time, thanks for watching.